it wouldn't change the decision.
We want to create peace between Israel and the Palestinians. We will get it done.
The controversial spending bill has now passed the House and heads to the U.S. Senate.
We cannot have the two greatest nuclear powers in the world cannot have this kind of relationship. We have to change it.
President Trump is marking the National Day of Prayer with an executive order protecting religious freedom.
If you saw my monologue on Monday, I had a few choice insults for the president. I don't regret that.
Copeg's own Pat Benatar, not live, but's been here live before, asking for us to hit her with her best shot, or our best shot.
And in fact, it was just a couple of summers ago, Brian, that she sang that song on our plaza, and we're getting close to the summer concert series.
I know.
This year brought to you by Keurig. The coffee
Funny
people
you should
are
say that.
bring it
Oh,
to us.
really?
Yes.
I love my Keurig machine. Do you have one?
I have 3 of them, actually.
They're wonderful. So we're excited that they're sponsoring us. That's nice of them.
And we're going to have one band a week, just like Keurig has 1 cup a day, right? 1 cup at a time, Keurig.
That's right.
Even I can figure it out. Sometimes I look at it and go, is there a chance I can't figure it out? But every time I can figure it out.
It's just convenient and it's easy. But listen, this is a great day if you're a Republican, a great day if you are the president, and they would argue it's a great day for all Americans because the House is going to vote today to repeal Obamacare.
That's right. We're going to talk about that in a minute. But right now, speaking of good cups of coffee, Pete Hegseth is out in Dubuque, Iowa, where I bet they've got some good eats for breakfast, Pete, and some terrific coffee.
And a lot of plaid.
Oh, of course, and great folks. We've got pancakes, we've got bacon wrapped cheese, we've got Patrick, who's an organic dairy farmer. And I got to say 2 things for Patrick. One, this table, they say, Brian, you're their favorite. So, Brian, I got to give you that one. But Steve, his daughter wants to know if your son Peter is single. So we've also got dating advice going on here at the diner. So a lot of love. We're going to talk politics, obviously. Yes, exactly. So exactly. I know, Steve, you've got some roots here. We're going to talk a ton, obviously, about Obamacare and the repeal vote today, since the last insurer on the exchange here in Iowa just said they're leaving. So a lot at stake here in Iowa on that subject too.
He looks a lot like he could be part of your family.
Yeah.
Look,
I'm from Iowa. He actually could be part of the family.
It might be.
All right, Pete, thank you very much. We'll check in with you and the crew out there in Dubuque in a little bit.
So the president invited 4 lawmakers over to the White House because he wanted all 4 of their votes. And he got them, it seems. Greg Walden, Mike Burgess, and, of course, you had Congressman Long and Congressman Upton. He said, I need your votes. What do you need? And the president started wheeling and dealing. And next thing you know, Kevin McCarthy's confirming it looks like the vote will go the Republicans' way today.
And then we heard... what's his name? The talk show host that was talking about his son. God, his name's
Jimmy Kimmel.
Jimmy Kimmel. He was talking about his son was born with a heart condition. He's going to be okay. But that got the ball rolling. People talking about pre-existing conditions, and that was what that's what Congressman Upton and Congressman Long said was their sticking point. That they wanted the people that they represented. They wanted, if you have a pre-existing condition, you should not be denied health care, just like Jimmy Kimmel's son, or all babies that are born with some sort of a problem.
And the reason that comes into play is because of the MacArthur Amendment, which was tacked on last week or 2. And what that said was that a state could get rid of essential benefits, and one of them was pre-existing. So what this does is it's going to put about $8 billion over 5 years to help people with pre-existing conditions. This money will go to states that opt out of that particular thing. There's going to be $1 billion for the first year and then $2 billion for the next 3. What is amazing, though, is that keep in mind, this bill pretty much was dead. It came up in the House at the end of March, and they didn't vote on it because they didn't have the votes. They thought they'd bring it up last week, didn't have the votes. Yesterday it was announced. The whip count was exactly on the nose. And the reason it was raised from the dead is the president's backstage appeal, member by member, trying to get this across the finish line. Because keep in mind, with the Republicans campaigning for 7 years on this issue, come next time people vote on the Congress, it would either look like they were feckless or dishonest. So they had to do something, and it looks like today they're gonna.
our brain room, who are all these researchers here at Fox, I asked them, what's the difference in Obamacare and what some are calling Trump care, just to make it easier? And they said that as far as tax credits are concerned, if you're under 30 years old, you're going to get a tax credit of $2,000 a year, which will help. If you're over 60, you get a tax credit of $4,000 a year. If you make a lot of money, though, you're exempt from that. You're not eligible for tax credits. Also, individuals will not be fined if they decide not to be a part of this, and insurance companies can charge older people more because they have more ailments.
Right, they get rid of all the taxes.
Just one hurdle today, the House. It goes to the Senate. Will it get through? Some say no. Senator Mike Lee, Senator Rand Paul have been consulting along the way. They think they know where they're going to go with this. We'll see where it goes. As Nancy Pelosi said, House Republicans are going to tattoo this moral monstrosity to their foreheads, and the American people will hold them accountable. Colorful adjectives aside, it's true. The House now owns this. Well, I'm not into the details of it. They're not out. The CBO has not scored this. The AMA is against this. AARP is against it. Neither which knows the detail of it. But it's game on. Now, everyone, the regular season has started. You're going to be judged on this.
Well, ultimately, it has been, in large part, the burden on small businesses. This is immediately going to help small businesses if you get rid of those taxes. The proof will be in the pudding, though. Is it going to be better coverage for people?
Well, and you say that it's going to be on the House. It would have also been on the House if they had not come together as a group and passed this thing, because the president wanted it. It really was. So I think it was important for them to get on board and do it. That's what Americans voted for. That's what they wanted.
One thing about the next topic we're going to talk about: when James Comey talks, people listen.
They do.
And I always end up a little bit more confused and confounded at the end, but always intrigued and interested.
You know, luckily, the Republicans are doing something about health care, because Mr. Comey revealed he was mildly nauseous.
Right.
Thinking about maybe his decision to go public with the investigation would have an impact on the election. He spoke at length, and he spoke at time emotionally about his decision. Here he is talking about whether or not he was wise to bring things up in public.
I could see two doors, and they were both actions. One was labeled speak, the other was labeled conceal. Having repeatedly told this Congress, we are done and there's nothing there, there's no case there, there's no case there, to restart in a hugely significant way, potentially finding the emails that would reflect on her intent from the beginning, and not speak about it would require an act of concealment, in my view. Look, this was terrible. It makes me mildly nauseous to think that we might have had some impact on the election, but honestly, it wouldn't change the decision.
So it's not his fault that he had to make this decision, first and foremost. He didn't choose this. When he got word from one of his FBI agents to say, we need to see you in October, we found a laptop with thousands of emails, some of which had the Verizon address on it that we've been unable to find, that have Hillary Clinton's genesis on there, the origins on there. What do you want us to do? So he looked at it and says, there's a reason to think that there's something really important here. So do I conceal it, or do I tell the American public I'm looking at it?
Then also Hillary Clinton, her top aide, Uma Abedin. If you read all the headlines this morning on all the newspapers, it talks about Anthony Weiner is back. This is what happened. She was sending all of her classified emails, hundreds of thousands of them, to her husband, Anthony Weiner, and he was printing them out for her. I guess she wanted to see it printed out. She didn't want to read it on her.
Does he have secrecy clearance?
No, he doesn't. So James Comey says 11 days before the election, I had to come out with this because we were investigating Anthony Weiner for allegedly whatever with a minor. And so they investigate him. They look at his emails, and they notice all these emails from his wife that was classified information. So the reason he reopened the investigation 11 days before the election is because of Uma Abedin forwarding those emails to her husband.
And that's important, Ainsley, because how many times, you know, on Tuesday, I think it was, the former First Lady said essentially she would have been president, you know, if the election were on October 27th, blamed Comey, blames Russia, stuff like that. Don't blame Comey. Don't blame Russia. Blame Uma, because she's the one who forwarded things to her husband, now estranged husband, Anthony Weiner, who got caught up in this whole FBI probe of his inappropriate online relationship with a minor child.
But these are confidential, secret information, top secret. And the reason why she's not prosecuted because she couldn't see a criminal intent.
Right.
I wish our military had that same thing. Remember the pictures of those people in the background on the nuclear sub? They didn't intend to be criminal. You're sending a picture home. What a triple, double, and triple standard for Uma Abedi to act so irresponsibly. And by the way, for the record, when you are campaigning, it's an audition to be president. How you act during that audition has everything to do with whether you get somebody's vote. We're seeing irresponsible acts by your aides on your orders. That's why you didn't win.
Not just the aides. How about the Attorney General? Mr. Comey said yesterday the capper for him to go public was the fact that Loretta Lynch wound up in an airplane on a tarmac out at Sky Harbor Airport in Phoenix with Bill Clinton. And at that point, he felt he would have to be the face of the investigation, make the announcement, because just a simple paper statement, as the DOJ normally does, was not, pass the smell test.
So the Democrats were just sloppy during the campaign, during the election.
Well, to say the least.
It didn't work out their way. But from now to high heaven, they're going to blame James Comey, Russians. Meanwhile, the Republicans are blaming the fact that he probably should have prosecuted her.
Abby Hudson's going to be delivering this weekend and delivered at 5 a.m. The question is, can she deliver this morning?
I bet
the headlines, the breaking news.
That is a great question. I've been going since 5 a.m., so I hope so. We do have a lot of news we're following, though. I do want to bring you a Fox News alert and a brand new warning about deadly truck terror attacks. The TSA urging truck owners and rental agencies to be on the lookout for terrorists who may steal their vehicles and use them as killing machines. This coming after recent ramming attacks worldwide, including one at Ohio State University and the Bastille Day massacre last summer in France. And this just in, Prince Philip is stepping down from royal duties, saying that he will no longer make public appearances. The 95-year-old British royal pictured just yesterday opening the stand at a new cricket ground. Well, the announcement coming just moments ago after Queen Elizabeth called an emergency meeting at Buckingham Palace overnight. Prince Philip will still be at official royal family engagements. And $1.1 trillion spending bill to fund the government through September now heading to the Senate after getting approval in the House. $15 billion in emergency funding will go toward rebuilding the military. $1.5 billion is slated for border security. The money will be used for thousands of additional detention beds, upgrades in border infrastructure, and technology like surveillance. It does not provide funding for a border wall. But that is not stopping the president from building that wall. Press Secretary Sean Spicer showing off the 20-foot barriers that will replace broken fences along our border.
What I'm telling anybody is that the president said he was going to build a wall, and he's doing it. And he's using the best technology and what the Department of Homeland Security under Secretary John Kelly says is the most effective way to keep people out, to stop drugs, to stop cartels, to stop human trafficking, and to prevent illegal immigration. That's what I'm telling you.
The wall is currently under construction in Arizona and New Mexico. He is doubling down on that, guys. He says the wall will be built.
Oh, we've heard.
We've heard. I'll be back soon.
Thank you very much.
Who's going to pay for it? That's what I want to know.
Yeah, no kidding. Meanwhile, President Trump's tax plan isn't just about jobs. It's really about the return of the American dream. Shelby Holliday is here from the Wall Street Journal to explain. Coming up. Good morning.
Hey, Shelby. Plus, did former President Obama once dream of being Donald Trump? Is all about one thing: boosting the economy.
We are trying to drive the economy. We're trying to drive growth. We're trying to drive more income back in American consumers' pockets.
But it's not just about lowering taxes, you wouldn't think. It's about making Americans' dreams come true.
Wall Street Journal reporter Shelby Holliday is here to discuss that. Good morning to you, Shelby.
Good morning.
So it really is more about the American dreams. He wants to lower taxes for everyone so that you can achieve the American dream.
Right, which is tied to economic growth. But the thinking is if you put more money in the pockets of average Americans, of the middle class, they'll spend more. That in turn stimulates the economy, creates more opportunities, businesses thrive, businesses add jobs, and it's a domino effect. There's also the same thinking behind corporate tax rates. If you let businesses hang on to more of their profit, they will pass that along to their employees. Now, some people raise concern and say, well, businesses could return it to shareholders who tend to be wealthy, so that creates more income inequality. Or they may hang on to their profits, reinvest them in research and development. But generally speaking, tax cuts put more money in the pockets of Americans.
Right.
And to your point about the American dream, gives them more opportunity.
But is that communicated effectively by the outline you saw last week? Do you think the administration is using the right words and the right phraseology?
If you listen carefully, I think they do, but they need to get that message out there. I mean, growing the economy sounds kind of boring. You know, it sounds like you're reading a high school textbook about economics.
But using personal prosperity and
personal prosperity, right? And you know, let people hang on to their money. This is their money. Let them keep more of it, not give your money to the rich, because that's not it's not what's happening.
But it's how Democrats message back. Look at some of the words that Chuck Schumer's using when he talks about massive tax cuts for the very wealthy, crumbs for everybody else. That's how Republicans have been labeled for forever.
Right, and that is effective messaging on the Democratic side if you oppose tax cuts, even though you could spin it any way, and the economy is so complex that anyone who wants to make an argument about tax cuts can find data to back that argument up.
Is it risky? Because it does balloon the debt or the deficit for our country. But in the long run, the president says more people, will, like you said, will be spending more money, so therefore we'll take care of the deficit eventually.
Right, so the administration is saying the tax cuts will pay for themselves. There are a lot of economists out there that say this deep of tax cut might not pay for itself. It's so deep. Maybe we should think about boosting the corporate tax rate or lowering the corporate tax rate closer to 20%, not 15%. There are a lot of nuances in there, but there is the concern of this being temporary tax cuts, not permanent. And that, if Americans have lower taxes today, but they know that tax rate's going up later, they won't spend as much money.
And to make them permanent, you need the 60 votes in the Senate, right?
You need the 60 votes in the Senate, or you do it through reconciliation, but it has to be deficit neutral.
Or you just need 51.
So it's tricky. I mean, you're threading needles here, but generally
But it does make us competitive with China. China's rate is 15%. If we want to keep corporations here, we got to
Our corporate rate's very high right now. So if we lower it and it's permanent and businesses can plan on that for the future,
they'll stay here.
They'll stay here and they'll spend money here.
Yeah. And if Donald Trump picks up steam, more Democrats might have things to themselves, I'm going to go along with this. But right now, there's none who are going along with this. Shelby Holiday, thanks so much.
Thank you.
I'm sure that'll ever happen.
Yeah.
All right, thank you, Shelby. Great to see you. Iran attempting to launch a cruise missile from a submarine, but were they successful?
Right, we'll answer that. And late-night comedian Stephen Colbert doubles down on his vile attack on the president. Next, we'll debate the fallout, if there is any.
Some quick headlines for you. The two presidential candidates in France facing off in a vicious final debate. Far-right leader Marine Le Pen and her opponent, centrist Emmanuel Macron, battling it out days away from this crucial election. A poll following the debate found 63% of people believe that Macron was more convincing than Le Pen. And Iran trying and failing to launch a cruise missile from a submarine. U.S. officials say it happened in the Strait of Hormuz. This comes just weeks after an Iranian ship came within 1,000 meters of the USS Mahan, causing it to change course. Steve?
Thank you very much, Ainsley. It's a familiar theme, the president taking on the press, calling them fake news.
Media outlets like CNN and MSNBC are fake news.
Mr. President, the media is not fake news.
So some wonder, is it the media's fault Americans don't trust them in some cases? Here for a chat this morning, we got Lawrence Jones. He's a host for The Blaze. He joins us from Dallas. And Jamila Bey is a radio talk show host from our nation's capital. Good morning to both of you.
Good morning. Hey, Steve.
Jamila, let's start with you. What did you make of the fact that at the White House Correspondents' Dinner over the weekend, everybody was talking about, hey, come on, Mr. President, we are not fake news. And yet, you look at some of their presentations, and it does appear they have a bias against the president, which would make them not fair and balanced.
The point of the White House Correspondents' Dinner is to hold up the First Amendment. You bring the leader of the free world and pillory him. Every president, except when Reagan was shot, has sat there taken his lumps and said, yes, we have the freedom of the press, we have freedom of speech and expression in this country, and it even rises to the occasion that the President of the United States can sit there and be a big boy and take it. The issue of fake news isn't what the White House Correspondents' Dinner is about. There are comedians there. Of course, that's fake. But this conflates the issue. The First Amendment is to be supported, and that's what this dinner actually does.
All right, very good. Lawrence, what do you think?
Well, let's get something straight. I think this president supports the First Amendment, but he also is dealing with a dishonest press that is clearly biased. For example, they want to hold this president accountable when it comes to policy choices, but there was no accountability when it came to Barack Obama. When he said, if you like your health care plan, you can keep it. There was no criticism of Hillary Clinton when it came to her email scandal. And now this White House Correspondents Association continues to have this rhetoric that Donald Trump is connected to Russia. So what we're seeing is a shady press. Maybe they aren't dishonest, but they're very shady in the way they present arguments, and they're clearly attacking this president.
All right, let's move to something else that people are going to be talking about today, and that is yesterday we played the soundbite from the night before from a 12-minute rant with Stephen Colbert, where he used what some regard as inappropriate language referring to our president. And then last night he went on his show and he said, I would do it again. However, I probably would change a few words because they were understandably on the vulgar side. So, Lawrence, I'm wondering from you, what do you think the fallout, if any, will be for Stephen Colbert?
Oh, he'll be fine. He'll be fine. If it was someone like me getting on TV like that as a conservative, you know, we can't even go on college campuses and give speeches right now because they want to silence us. But when you're a liberal and you're a progressive or you're in Hollywood in the bubble, then somehow they rally around this behavior. You got the DNC leader using profanity when kids are at the rally. There is no standard when it comes to the Democratic Party right now. This guy would be fine. If it was me, I would probably be off air. That's why every time I'm on TV, I act like it's my last, because you never know what you're going to say, and they'll take you off.
You are right about that. Let us show...
No, he's not right about that. No.
Yeah.
There is a double standard, and it goes like this. Donald Trump got to say the most vulgar things about where he brags of grabbing women, about how he made fun of a New York Times reporter who's physically challenged. There's nothing more vulgar than to do that. So when a comedian comes out and, you know, uses some flowery language that leans toward the blue, you say, oh, not my cup of tea. You change the channel if you don't like it. Or if you're like me, you go, wow, that Colbert sure is funny.
See, the difference from you guys is I'm not trying to silence this guy. When we start to have our speech, you guys want us off air. You kick us off campus. You try to get us fired from our networks. This is the behavior that you guys do. We don't do the boycotting. That's what you guys do.
You are so being disingenuous with that. Absolutely.
Where do you see conservatives taking people off of campus? Where do you see boycotts from conservatives to take people off air? Just name one.
Every time the million moms who didn't like the fact that one of the cereal commercials had 2 gay parents and a child. You see backlash. No,
I'm talking about people in media.
When is commercial not media? The point is that...
No, I'm not talking about moms. I'm talking about people in media, political figures, actors and actresses trying to get people off of air. Where do you see that? Where do you see conservatives rallying on campus, burning up the street?
Lawrence, let her finish.
The point is not that you have people call. People always call for folks to get put off the air. You look at politically incorrect that got yanked when Bill Maher said that those who flew the planes into buildings were not cowards. That liberal got yanked off the air. There were speeches about it in Congress, and you've had that kind of thing since. The First Amendment underpins this very democracy. Having comedians stand up and hold a mirror to this society and say, journalists, you need to be watchdogs and not lapdogs. That's
But they're
important.
not being watchdogs.
All right.
They're
not
being dishonest, and they know
they're
it.
not being dishonest. They're being hilarious.
Jamila and Lawrence, we thank you both for this peppy talk first thing in the morning regarding comedians and freedom of the press. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks, brother.
You bet. So what do you think about that? Email us, friends@foxnews.com, or you could Facebook us or tweet us. Meanwhile, Resistance 101, should colleges really be teaching your child how to defy the commander-in-chief? Because some are. And Pete Hegseth is live in Dubuque with voters who helped push President Trump over the finish line in 2016. Right, Mr. Flannel?
That is right. That's right. And we're in the West Dubuque Tap. It is standing room only, as you can see. And this is called a magic muffin. Apparently, there's a muffin on the bottom of that, too. These two gentlemen are going to eat it, and I'm going to make sure they eat the whole thing. Stick with us here on Fox and Friends.
Big.
The order signals several key victories for Americans and business owners who have been calling for reform in this department.
All right, buckle up. Kevin Corke is live outside the White House to break it all down. Hey, Kevin.
Good morning.
Hey, always great to talk to you guys. Good morning to you. You're right. This is a major victory for Americans of faith. Frankly, this has been something the president has been talking about, not just on the campaign trail, but even in office. And this executive order really speaks to the heart of what his administration believes, and more importantly, what a great many, millions of Americans believe, and that is more religious liberty. Now, this is the executive order the president is going to unroll today. It basically protects and vigorously promotes religious liberty. It also directs the IRS to ease enforcement of the so-called Johnson Amendment. I say so-called because we're not sure how long that's going to last. It's still law, by the way, but it really does dial it back a great deal. It allows the IRS to just take it easy on enforcement when it comes to religious speech, even criticism from the pulpit, if you will. It also eases the Obamacare mandate for religious objectors to preventative services, and that includes some contraceptive services. This is a huge victory on this, the day of prayer in the nation's capital. The president also going to meet with some Catholic cardinals here along the way, and this